Hi, everybody.
Hi there, guys.
You stole that from me, didn't
That's Matt's way of doing it. Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
How's everybody doing?
Hi, everybody.
Yeah,
we're doing good.
good.
Glad to be here.
So this show, we're going to be talking about autism awareness. I know Jim, during the Helping Hands hour, was talking about some of his experiences with autism and some of his insights into that, and with having a child that has autism. And there's so many different areas that we can talk about. You want to share a little bit about your experiences too? Or?
Yeah, I can do that. Again, my experience kind of developed with marrying my husband, and he had a son that was autistic. And fortunately, I was a teacher, and I'm retired now. But I had quite a bit of experience with children who were on the spectrum, and I think people have to understand the spectrum. The spectrum can be a person who just doesn't want to be too social. They're very kind of uncomfortable with people. There could be somebody who doesn't want to look you in the eye because it makes them very uncomfortable. It can be a person who likes heavy structure. Could be on the spectrum. Usually when they're on the spectrum, there's usually 2 or 3 things that person has that's unique that puts them on the autism spectrum. And it can go all the way over to a person who just cannot even control themselves. And they are just, there's no centering of their body or their movement. So it's a vast difference. When we say a person's autistic, you have to say, where are they on the spectrum is probably the question you might ask.
Yeah, and I think the spectrum is something that people might hear and wonder what that is, and it's very broad. I would say it's rather fluid too, kind of changing as people are understanding things more. And I know years ago they didn't understand it a lot. My older brother, has autism, and now recently. My nephew's son, which would be my brother's son, or my brother would be the grandfather, was diagnosed with autism. And what's refreshing and hopeful with it is that now there's so many more supports. There's so much better understanding. It is a very broad area. There's some individuals that have a hard time. I mean, they're banging their head against the wall. They're biting themselves. But now that it's been studied quite a bit, they're starting to understand what's causing these things. And I know I just watched a video at work recently because I work at the Arc of the Ozarks. I work with individuals with disabilities, and I was in their autism department for a couple of years. And I saw a video of a young gal that, she would bang her head on the wall. She wasn't able to communicate, and they were able to teach her how to use an electronic pad. To communicate, and not only is she able to communicate now, but she's actually written 1 or 2 books and has explained life from her point of view and explains why there's times she's banging her head on the floor. It's like there's things that some of the individuals can't control. And again, because it's such a wide area, it's really hard for people to understand. They hear that autism and they may have in their mind certain ideas, but I think one of the things Jim brought out a lot is that a lot of times it's very strongly on the social side of things, on personal interactions, the ability to handle or understand. I know for my brother, one of the issues he has is he doesn't understand social cues, so he could be in an area goofing around, doing what he's doing, having a great time, not realizing how he's really irritating other people around him.
That's right.
Getting on their nerves, or they're like, no, we need to do this. And they did one study on him, and they said he had the attention span of about a 6-month-old, but the problem-solving abilities of a brain surgeon. So put those together, because his area is more on the Asperger side of things. So he worked at this company that had these huge rolls of paper up in Wisconsin, several ton rolls of paper. You can't even imagine how big they are. And they had a train car coming in with some paper, and the warehouse manager was like, well, we don't have room for the paper. And he's like, well, just give me a little bit of time and I can move some stuff around. I'll make room. They're like, there's just not enough room. And he's like, no, give me time. By the time he was done, he had enough room for 3 train cars full of paper.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't think they had enough room for 1. They started sending him around the country doing it because he could see angles and things. And I know I was with him once, and we ran into this situation, and he's like, well, take this and put it there. And I was like, that'll never work. And we did it, and it worked perfectly. And it was but he could see things in different angles. And I think sometimes we'll think of things like ADD, autism, things like that, as a real negative, where there can be some positives.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know I've definitely have worked with individuals that have a lot of problems, and part of it's not having the support too.
Right. One of the things I was just going to go on, and we can talk about support, is that a lot of times your autistic person, because they can focus on a very small thing, like you said, the rolls of paper and things like that, they're highly intelligent, and they can accomplish amazing things.
Yep.
Like in Lee Summit, we have the robotics program, and it's an after-school program, but we also try to immerse it into or merge it into the other classes, science and math and things like that. But anyhow, some of the best robotics students were ones that were somewhat on the autism spectrum, and they can really focus and get things done. They can do finite things. Jim will probably talk to you about, or did talk about, Alex, and Alex, had fine motor skill. And when we were asking him to do maybe fix a coin mech or something like that, Jim couldn't do it because he couldn't get his thumbs working like he wanted him to, and his son was just, he got in there and just there it was,
Right.
But on the other side, on the side of the coin, I remember telling Alex, I said, well, which tree do you like better? And he said, well, all the trees are the same. And then I thought, So we just went out and walked in the front yard, and we had lots of different kinds of trees. And I said, well, do you see this tree's leaves? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, just take one off. We'll go to another tree, and do you see that this leaf is different than that leaf? And after a while, he did, but not necessarily right at the first. So they can do something very narrow in perspective, but the broad picture is not there. Like you said, they can look at you, and they can't. You could be really angry, and they don't see it necessarily. Some people on the spectrum.
Right. Yeah, and I think, again, one of the things that's really helpful today is there's a lot more opportunities, a lot more awareness. There's more programs and things like that, because there are individuals that are not able to communicate. They do things that you think, why are they doing that? They're banging their head against the wall. They're flapping around like a duck. They're, biting themselves, things like that. But if with the right supports, a lot of those individuals can make a lot of progress and live very, very healthy and productive lives.
Yes.
And I know for my brother, one of the issues that we ran into with him is, that was many years ago, and they didn't know what it was. Even for myself, I have attention deficit disorder, and didn't know what it was until his children were being diagnosed, and I started realizing, oh, well, that's me, and being able to get some of the help that I needed. And for him, he didn't have that, and so it led to a lot of issues, addictions, things like that. As they search, one of the things that can be very helpful for individuals with autism is a proper diet. We talked earlier at another show. We were talking about natural solutions, and we don't realize how toxic some of the foods we eat, some of the processed foods, the dyes they put in it, how much it is for our bodies. Because if we're fairly healthy, it has us put on some weight. Maybe it makes us a little lethargic or whatever, but we don't notice it that much. But someone with autism, if their brain's already having these issues and they're having these physical issues, it can really exacerbate those issues. And I've definitely seen a number of examples where, with proper diet and good nutrition, there's individuals that went from having major issues with being able to sit still or concentrate or do these things, were able to actually function in a much healthier way. An individual with autism is always going to have some issues in certain areas, but they can definitely be given assistance and help and being able to be more productive and And so looking at a lot of those areas is helpful.
Right. One of the things Acts Ministry has done in the past couple of years is they produced some films out of Topeka, Kansas. And there was a police officer there who was he was on his regular route, and I think the story goes, I have to remember exactly, that a little boy was lost, and he got the notice that he was supposed to go do one thing, but there's a little boy lost in that area, so he followed the directions of where he thought the little boy was, and the little boy was going into a lake. And Topeka is known for a lot of lakes. They have a lot of little lakes here and there. And he was getting ready to drown. Not because he wanted to drown, but because they are drawn. They've found, and I don't know, I wouldn't say all autistic people are drawn, but a large percentage of young people, they're drawn to water. Maybe it's peaceful or something, calming. But we did a series of 3 films talking about, being aware of it, what you can do, letting the police department in your area know where all the swimming pools and lakes are, where your child is. And we did one of those, and it's still a popular video that we have on Media
Autism
Group.
and Water.
Yeah,
because it's something that some
relevant.
people don't realize. Now, there's a lot of neat opportunities that are given to individuals with disabilities, individuals with autism. Things like they'll even do a day at the lake or a fishing thing. And those things can be done. It's just then it's with the proper supervision. It's with assistance. It's being aware of the individuals. I know Jim talked about, someone that, took the extra time and expense to make sure their child was able to learn how to swim properly.
Right.
Be able to do that. Some may not be able to. Then you're always making sure if they're near bodies of water, they have a life jacket on. There's different things. If you have an individual that has seizures and you never know when they're going to happen and they're going to be by a boat dock or something like that, you'd have a life jacket on. So sometimes there's things that are just kind of common sense things. You may not think about it for yourself. I have no problem walking here, but there's someone else that if they may have that tendency to jump in or fall in the water or something like that, taking those precautions can be awesome.
Well, we have a group in Kansas City, since Jim and I are, busy in autism, when we big supporters of autism awareness with Acts Ministry. But up in Kansas City, there's a group called Autism Outreach Fellowship, which we're also very big on promoting. And one of the things that they do on a regular basis is they hire a pontoon boat, and there's a dock out there at one of the local areas. It's a big lake, and we invite the kids out. But again, we have proper supervision, like you're saying. We have the fire marshal, we have the police department, we have parents coming along, and they put life jackets on. Them, and they go for a pontoon ride, and then they go. They have fishing poles, and they have these huge carp. I mean, they're this big. They're like pets, But I don't know how many of those carp have been caught 19 times. And the kids get a big bang at it, but they learn that this is a safe way to do it, and this is how you do it, and you let somebody help you with the fish, when you catch it and that sort of thing. And so just that awareness and getting, know what some things that might be a problem for them, try to overcome it.
And that makes me think about, there's a lot of great programs and institutions that are out there, a lot of great helps that are out there, information, and that's one of the things that we do here at Acts Ministry and Acts Media Group is awareness. And it's not that we're trying to do it all ourselves. We're wanting to help share and shed light on these different places. Like even for myself, I work at the Ark of the Ozarks. They're not a sponsor or anything, but they have an autism department, and it's a place where a lot of individuals are able to go and get help and have people that are specially trained in autism, because sometimes it's really hard in a home to be able to do it with just a husband and a wife.
Oh, yes.
And those kind of areas are available. Actually, they're having a big hiring event on, I think, Wednesday, the 30th, from 10 to 2. So if someone's looking for a job in the area, tell them Dennis Everson sent you. Tell them about Acts Media Group.
Yes.
They're not a sponsor, so I just throw that in there.
Yeah.
But a lot of good programs and things. There's a lot of information online. I like some of the videos. There's individuals that have autism that have done videos that you can find on YouTube and those places. And they share what their perspective is and why they see things in certain ways, and those can be really helpful just to have that awareness. And then if you don't have someone in your family that has autism, but maybe somebody else does, I know Jim has mentioned before, he mentioned a little bit in the show he was doing earlier, how hard it is on families. A lot of times when they have a child that has autism, how hard it is to go to church. There's a lot of churches that, they want things, nice and in order, and they don't want someone that's just doesn't understand that. Maybe they'd get up in the middle of service, or they'd scream, or they would do something, and they just don't want that disruption where if we're aware of these things and the issues and can say, okay, you know what? It's not that that person's having a behavioral issue. It's not that they are being disrespectful. This is an illness that they have. They wouldn't think nothing about someone walking in on crutches or being in a wheelchair. But a lot of times when it comes to some of the issues with the mind and nerves and emotions and things like that, the church isn't always as open to those things.
Right.
And I think that's something that we can all improve on.
Oh, yes, I agree. And again, Axe Ministries has been involved with autism for several years, as long as I've been with them. And we've had race car races, and we've invited families with autism that have autistic children or themselves to the races, because sometimes you don't go to that because one is expensive family event,
Right.
and then it's really loud, so we've had sponsors that would buy the earplugs and put in their ears for them, because that's a protective thing for both children and adults.
Right.
And then we have had a health fair in Kansas City, Axe Ministry has, and they talked about autism awareness and letting people know what you can and cannot do.
And that's good, the idea of making that available for them, and you mentioned the cost, and that's something people may not realize also, is that if you're in a family and you have a child that has autism, it's hard to do some things because there's a lot of times that they could get overwhelmed, their senses get overloaded, and they can't stay in a place. So to pay money to go buy a movie ticket or to go to some kind of show or something like that, even if they could sit there or they might like watching it, you don't know if they're going to make it all the way through. Do I spend the money on that?
Right. Oh,
How many
yes.
times do you have to leave early? I know I've worked with
Yes.
individuals with autism that one of the goals was to be able to get them to go to the movies. And it could be real trying, because you get halfway through or something, all of a sudden just get up and leave.
What?
So,
But it is important to provide those kind of experiences for people with autism.
Right.
And, Axe Ministry would like to do probably more. If we had more funding, we could do more, videos and things. But fortunately, there's places like, your company. And then there's my Autism Outreach Fellowship, which also provides, we just did a Pumpkin Valley. And they let the families with autistic children come in early so that they could, kind of enjoy the things without too much commotion, because loud noises and too much commotion makes them nervous, and to enjoy that, and then, kind of mix that with other people as well. And so it's important that, we know as Axe Ministry, maybe you have a group that's, and we can help you, promote it.
Yep.
And then, we like to do our own promoting because we believe wholeheartedly in it, in all varieties of things, but the whole family, because it is hard.
Yep.
But, and sometimes you find families that don't just have one autistic child, they have several.
Right.
Yeah, and that is a real handful. And parents are so impressed with somebody that will invite them all out and understand the situation. They don't have to worry about, if my child is having a bad day.
Because, it affects the whole family's social life.
Right.
Their ability
Yes, it does.
to interact in many ways. And,
Yes.
and when it comes to the sensory issues with individuals with autism, again, there's a whole spectrum. But for many of them, they can get overloaded with their senses. And some of them, they crave sensual experience. They need things that they can touch, that they can feel. They may be tactile. They may have to do with sound, and maybe different things. And so that's getting to know those individuals too. And then if there's individual families in our lives that we know of that have a child, that have an individual that we can help with that, then we could maybe do some things, you know, where we invite them to the home and we made sure this area was cleared out of that kind of stuff. Or we made sure this area had a lot of that stuff that they do like, you know, different types of furs and textured things that they like, you know. And it's something that we can all improve on and be aware of. And it's just one of those areas that Acts Ministry and Acts Media Group is always wanting to help with awareness and spreading those things and doing more shows where they can come on and talk about, you know, health issues, foods that you can't eat, you know, better ideas on how to structure things and things like that.
And that's what this telethon is about, is for you to bring in donations so that we can expand, maybe do more videos, have a